Okay, let's unpack this incredible cultural phenomenon that swept through Europe during the 14th and 15th centuries, the Renaissance.
Right.
For, well, for centuries, music was nearly synonymous with religion. It really lived inside the church.
Hmm.
But then suddenly, music just explodes out of the chapel and into the streets, the taverns, and most importantly, the grand halls of power.
It's a huge shift. I mean, the Renaissance is the moment secular music for fun, for socializing, for pure entertainment, becomes not just popular, but, well, absolutely mandatory.
And this massive demand, it led to musicians creating entirely new styles, right?
Exactly. Instrumental styles dedicated solely to the art of dance.
And when we talk about dance in the Renaissance, we are not talking about, casually shuffling your feet. We're talking about high stakes, rigorous training.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to understand, learning these complex steps was considered a vital part of a young, noble person's education.
It really was.
If you wanted to signal grace, discipline, and maturity, you had to be able to command the dance floor.
Think of it as a mandatory life skill, like learning to read or managing your estate. And the music had to support that.
How so?
Well, the early Renaissance melodies were very simple, repetitive, which made it easier for dozens of people to follow along instantly.
Ah, so everyone could keep up.
Everyone. The tempo was predictable, usually moderate, somewhere between, say, 60 and 120 beats per minute. That steady, reliable rhythm was the foundation for everything.
And here's where we get into the social physics of it all. Dance wasn't just entertainment.
No,
It was the social network of the 14th century, and it came with incredibly high stakes. If you were a member of the nobility, your entire family's reputation and social standing could honestly hinge on the quality of your footwork.
and the center of that universe was the royal court. Places like the courts in England and France were the absolute epicenters of European fashion and manners.
So the kings and queens were driving this trend.
They were. They hired massive staffs of professional musicians just to provide music for their constant grand balls and nightly parties.
Hmm.
They weren't paying for background noise, you see.
They were financing a system of social control.
Precisely. It was the ultimate status symbol, wasn't it? Showing off your wealth wasn't enough.
You had to prove your family had the time and resources to teach you refined, sophisticated manners. But if you were a courtier, what happened if you made a visible mistake?
That's where the pressure really mounts. Courtiers spend hours and hours practicing the intricate footwork and posture with professional dance masters.
So this wasn't just a hobby.
Not at all. We know that every single movement was scrutinized. It wasn't just about the steps. It was how they held their head, the delicate movement of their arms, and the absolutely flawless execution of a deep bow or curtsy.
And failing meant.
Failing meant ridicule, and ridicule meant losing influence. It was that serious.
And the setting itself must have amplified that pressure. These events happened in these enormous organized spaces.
Huge castle halls, sometimes over 50 feet high, and they were often lit entirely by hundreds of flickering candles.
Wow. Imagine stepping into that environment, knowing you're being watched by everyone important, draped in the most expensive silks and velvets. It had to be spectacular, but
But terrifying. Exactly. And this environment created the critical social connections of the age.
how do you mean?
Because formal court life was incredibly restrictive. Dancing provided one of the very rare, sanctioned chances for young men and women to interact closely.
So that's where the networking happened.
That's where it happened. We know that so many key marriages that united families, wealth, and power, were arranged after the young people met and assessed each other's grace at these formal events.
So if you danced poorly,
You were literally signaling that you lacked discipline and, well, you felt left out of those critical opportunities.
okay, so once the initial entrance was complete and the tension was set, the party really got going.
Right.
The music hosts didn't just stick to one rhythm. They offered variety by organizing the music into suites.
Which are basically collections of different dance pieces.
Yes, to constantly shift the mood of the room.
That variety was key, and it meant dancers had to be musically astute, too. They had to recognize the shift in the music instantly to know what steps were required next.
So we can categorize these dances then.
We can, broadly, into two main styles: the slow, serious dances for display, and the fast, athletic dances for energy.
Let's start with the display pieces. The pavane is probably the most famous slow dance, right?
It is. It was slow, serious, majestic, and it had a very singular function:
Which was?
to allow people to parade their incredibly elaborate and expensive clothing to the entire crowd. It was the ultimate fashion show set to a steady beat.
And right alongside it was the bass dance.
Consider the height of Renaissance elegance. The name literally means low dance. The rule was that your feet must stay very close to the floor.
And this was for the top tier of society.
Often reserved for the highest members, yes, because it demanded such perfect, smooth control.
So what's so fascinating is the music that creates that smooth, gliding appearance. How did that work?
Well, the bass dance was slow and steady, usually in a stately triple meter. But the way the musicians played it is what we need to zoom in on.
Okay.
They used a long, foundational, slow tune running underneath everything. We call that a cantus firmus.
Like a bass line.
Think of it like a bass line, or the anchor theme song of the piece, exactly. Then, the musicians would improvise and play faster, highly decorative notes over that slow central tune.
Ah, so the main slow melody holds the rhythm for the dancers, while the other instruments are playing these flashy, fast solos on top. That makes perfect sense.
Precisely. It creates a very dignified, almost floating appearance for the dancers.
Yeah.
And these weren't long dances, maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Just enough time to impress and rotate partners.
You've got it.
And then you have the gear shift. After all that dignity, it's time for the athletic workout.
The Galliard.
Or Galliard.
Yeah.
This dance was absolutely lively, full of explosive energy, hops, and jumps.
So famous that Queen Elizabeth, I loved it.
She did, and reportedly danced it vigorously well into her 60s.
That's amazing. The Galliard was sometimes nicknamed the syncopace because it was built around 5 distinct steps that made up the core rhythm. The music was in quick triple time with a very strong driving beat that forced movement.
And this was the chance for the men to genuinely show off their strength and agility.
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't subtle. Men would perform impressive leaps and sharp kicks.
We're talking about dancers jumping several inches off the ground, sometimes clicking their heels together in midair.
Yes, it required serious cardiovascular endurance. If the pavane was the reserved display of wealth, the Galliard was the celebration of youth and vitality.
And the music for these fast dances really provided a physical outlet, often coming directly after the slow, serious pieces to keep the party dynamic changing.
Exactly.
So how were these sounds created? We don't have the modern orchestra layout. The musicians played in smaller groups known as consorts.
Right, consorts were the backbone of the Renaissance band. But they came in 2 flavors.
2 flavors.
You had the whole consort, which was a group composed entirely of instruments from the same family. So imagine just an ensemble of different size recorders or different size viols.
Okay, all one family.
And then you had the more colorful broken consort, which was a mix of different types of instruments, say a flute, a lute, and a viol playing together.
That mix must have allowed for a much richer texture.
It did, combining the soft sounds of woodwinds with the plucking of strings.
And the lute was a superstar instrument.
Extraordinarily popular for that exact reason. It was versatile. It could play both the melody and the harmony at once, essentially covering the job of multiple instruments.
And to anchor all these sounds, you had percussion.
Right. Typically the tabor drum, which was critical for keeping all the dancers precisely on beat.
You know, if you listen to Renaissance music today, you realize how different it sounds. It's so much lighter and softer than the music we hear now.
That's because of the materials. Instruments were handmade from high-quality wood, and the strings were often made of animal gut.
And that produces a very distinct sound.
A very gentle, warm texture. They weren't designed to fill a massive concert hall. They were designed for the acoustics of a bustling court or a smaller chamber.
Now, besides the musicians, the professional dance masters were key to spreading this culture.
They really were.
They were constantly demonstrating the complex steps and the proper musical phrasing, and they needed a portable tool for that.
And they often used a very specific instrument called a pochette.
A pochette.
If you can imagine a violin that's been shrunk down to fit in your pocket, that's what a pochette was. It was only about 10 inches long.
Perfect for a quick demonstration.
Exactly. The ultimate pocket practice device.
But the real turning point for Renaissance music wasn't a new instrument, was it? It was a technological breakthrough.
You're talking about the printing press.
The printing press. Before that, music was copied by hand, which was agonizingly slow and incredibly expensive.
The press changed everything. Publishers like Pierre Atteignant in Paris pioneered printing vast collections of this popular dance music.
So this technological advancement instantly made music available to more people than ever before.
It did. Suddenly, amateur musicians, the curious listener, or noble families far from the royal court, could get the latest hits and play them right at home.
And this standardization was especially important for certain instruments. For lute players, they didn't read standard sheet music. They used a specific notation called tablature.
Tablature is brilliant because it doesn't tell you what note to play, but rather where to put your fingers on the strings.
Sort of like a simplified chord chart for a modern guitar player.
That's a great way to think about it. And printing allowed this specific tablature notation to be standardized and disseminated across vast distances.
Meaning the galliard you danced in London was essentially the same one being danced in Rome.
Pretty much, yeah.
This cultural sharing meant that different parts of Europe started borrowing ideas but kept their own regional flavor, right? It wasn't a monolith.
Not at all. You saw clear national preferences emerge. Italy, for example, really loved the saltarello. A quick, energetic dance characterized by skipping movements. England was famous for its more democratic country dances performed in long lines or large circles.
Allowing broader participation.
Exactly. France, on the other hand, was the master of formality, strictly preferring the structured court dances with perfect posture and complex bowing rituals.
And because musicians were traveling professionals, moving between courts for work, bringing their music with them, this cultural exchange was incredibly fast.
So fast. A Spanish dance might become the next big hit in London within months. Movement and rhythm were driving the first pan-European pop culture.
If we look at the bigger picture, though, this dance music eventually ran its course.
It did. As the Renaissance transitioned into the Baroque period, musical tastes began to change. Music became less focused solely on the necessity of dancing and much, much more complex.
So the simpler, steady rhythms we talked about, the repetitive beats of the bass dance and pavane, were replaced.
They were replaced by incredibly intricate melodies, rich harmonic structures, and much thicker musical textures designed for listening, not just for moving.
And this change is evident in how those suites were treated.
Absolutely. They stopped being the playlist for a party and became formalized concert pieces that people would sit down and listen to quietly in a theater.
And instruments evolved, too.
They did. The older, softer viols were slowly replaced by the brighter, louder, and more powerful violin, signaling a shift toward more dramatic sound.
And what about those highly complicated dance steps, the bass dance and the galliard?
They didn't disappear entirely. They were refined and formalized, eventually evolving into the very early structures of ballet.
But by the mid-17th century, the era of a Renaissance social dance had really faded from the royal courts.
It had. And yet the legacy is enormous.
Yeah.
The structure of Renaissance dance music provided the foundation for many folk dances and influenced the very structure of the classical music we still hear today.
It was the original lesson in discipline, grace, and how to effectively navigate the social world.
It truly was.
So when you think about why we still care about this music, realize that the moment a tune starts, be it a slow pavane or a leaping galliard, the joy of moving to that steady, shared beat is a universal feeling. That fundamental human desire to signal who you are through movement is what connects you directly to a courtier hundreds of years ago.
The need to move and belong is truly timeless. Good luck with your studies.